Some women don't lose themselves because they stop loving. They lose themselves because they never stop giving. If you've ever felt guilty for protecting your peace, setting a boundary, or choosing your own well-being, this conversation is for you.
Hey guys, welcome back to Rooted Vines and welcome back to the table. One day I'll have a better table. If you do not know me, I'm Mayaka Anderson, the herbal alchemist, and I own a herbal tea business for women who feel overwhelmed and stressed out. And today I want to talk about loving from afar. I remember the exact day that I learned that love sometimes requires distance. Best lesson of my life. And it wasn't through the church, and it wasn't because I was reading my Bible. It wasn't even during prayer that I learned this valuable lesson. It happened while I was putting together a table with my brother in my new apartment. Uh, just crazy how life works, right? Everything is trying to teach you a lesson. You expect God to teach you the biggest lessons during the biggest moments, but sometimes, y'all, sometimes He waits until you're sitting still. For me, it was when I was sitting on the floor of this apartment that I just got with an Allen wrench in my hand, surrounded by different pieces of furniture that I picked up from Sears. Y'all remember Sears. Wondering how I ended up here and why my life looked so different, right? I had just left my husband, and that wasn't a pretty picture. And the apartment wasn't much, but it was mine. And for me, I needed a certain type of peace. I had boxes everywhere on the wall, pictures still leaning on the floor, honey, because I hadn't decided where it belonged yet. And I was working so much, right? I was working a lot of hours. So trying to put my apartment together, man, I just felt so much exhaustion. And some of that exhaustion came from the back. I was working close to like 60 hours a week in the emergence department. And I know y'all talking about 60 hours. Y'all, I was in working through trauma. So sometimes it would even work more. It was the only place I felt safe. And people hear that and they're like, oh, wow, you were making good money. You were, I liked my job, but that was not healthy. I was surviving because I didn't want to come home. And so work was a safe place for me. And it was safe but not healthy. I had my 4 children depending on me. So, I worked hard. The bills didn't care whether I was tired, y'all. They just kept coming. And the lights didn't stay on because I needed a break, right? It doesn't pay the light bill. And the bills for the mortgage, because I still had to do that, they wasn't caring about my emotional health. And this new apartment I got, life just kept asking for more, honey. It was asking for everything I got, every drop of blood. And if I'm honest with you, I kept giving it. I kept giving it. I couldn't stop. I had become really good at this thing called survival. And sis, I know you have too. And we all have our stories. But people admire that. They say things like, "Oh, you're so strong. Girl, you'll figure it out." I don't know how you do it, sis. I don't know how you do it. Y'all heard that one before, right? But you guys, have you ever noticed that people compliment the very thing that's actually killing you? Sometimes they'll applaud your endurance without ever asking what it's actually costing you. Now, I don't think anybody means any harm by these statements or questions or whatever. I think we simply live in a world that celebrates women who carry those impossible loads, especially Black women. I can speak for my sisters out there. We are really expected to be everything, and everything with a smile. We're expected to be strong. We are expected to be independent and dependable. We we're taught to be resilient and successful. and at the same time graceful. Oh, selfless. The list goes on and on, as if we were born carrying the weight of entire families on our backs. Is that why we got these big backs? Because we got to carry so much. Somewhere along the way, being exhausted became just our normal reputation. That's what we're supposed to be. And a lot of us picked it up and we wear it as a medal. And a lot of us are trying to break that now, because I know I wore it as a medal. I thought that's what good women just did. You know, you worked. You worked at home, you worked at school, you worked with your family, you took care of the children, you cleaned the house from top to bottom, you're wiping the walls, the baseboards, you contribute to the bills, and some of us are paying all the bills, but you showed up, you smiled, you put on your lipstick, you batted your eyes, and if you had anything left in you, you gave that little bit away too, honey. Yes. No one ever told me there was another way to live. I thought this was going to be it for me. So there I was, building that table with my brother, trying to build a new life, trying to put back together all the pieces that were laying out, even if they didn't feel like they belonged anymore. And my brother, I mentioned him, he had came over to help with the table. At least I thought that's what it was. I thought that's what it was. We were tightening screws and talking when he looked at me and said something I will never forget. You should work a few more hours of overtime and give me that money, those extra coins. And y'all, he wasn't laughing. He wasn't he wasn't even teasing at this point, right? He meant every word he had just said to me. And I remember just looking at him, not really saying anything, looking at him. Not because I couldn't believe what he said, because I couldn't believe that he, in that moment, couldn't see me. He didn't see the woman who had been carrying his, my four children, his nieces. He didn't see the woman working herself into the ground already. He didn't see the woman trying to rebuild after a broken marriage. He didn't see the woman who was still trying to survive the imaginable pain of discovering that someone my family trusted, someone who stood behind a pulpit, had violated the trust of two of my daughters. Y'all, he didn't see none of that. He didn't see none of that. What he did see, and this came later on, y'all, he saw a resource. How many of you are resources? He didn't see me as his sister. He saw me, understand, as a resource. Someone to work harder so life could be easier for him. And I think about that all the time. I thought about that moment many times over my years. And it's not because I'm angry about it, but this is how I learned this lesson of loving from afar. I'm not angry because time has a way of sanding down the sharp edges of old wounds if we allow God to come in and hold them for us. But I do go back to that moment because it taught me something I wish someone had taught me years earlier without having to experience these type of things, but we all got our own paths. Love is not the same thing as enabling. And a lot of us sis are enablers. And I know that's uncomfortable to hear, especially for women, right? Because we want to give. because we've been taught that loving people means fixing the things, helping, rescuing. We are rescuing, giving it all away, right? Sacrificing. That is a huge one. And showing up everywhere, anytime, again and again and again and again. And then one day we wake up and realize we're exhausted. And this usually happens in your late 30s, 40s. Some of us are a little later 50s. And the people we've been rescuing are no closer to standing on their own feet than they were in the beginning. You know, I looked at my brother that day, and for the first time in my life, I kid you not, I didn't feel guilty. I felt like I had to protect myself. I saw a clear path to freedom because there's a difference, right? There's a difference in that. Sometimes clarity feels cold when you spent your whole life confusing it with guilt. And a lot of us do that. I quietly told him to leave because he was going to catch these hands, y'all. I didn't have the energy to yell. I couldn't make a scene. Um, I didn't even explain myself. I just was like, boy, you need to go on and go. You need to leave right now. And that was the day. That was the day. Well, the last day, I guess, I ever carried him. He's 44 years old now. Yeah. And he knows I don't play no games. And he's still making the same choices, still doing the same things, still living the life that he has chosen for himself. And that's okay. That's okay. Don't bring your foolishness here. I do love him. I love him absolutely. And I pray for him. That's the only thing that I have left for him is to pray. And he crosses my mind. And I have hopes for him. But I learned something sitting in the apartment floor that day. Okay. I learned to love him from afar.